Hi, I'm David Couch with the Kentucky Department of Education. Thanks for joining us here for our April version of our Kentucky K-12 CIO and EdTech Leaders webcast. We haven't met in a couple months. Last time we got together was February, and mainly because we had the KISTI conference coming up, or it would already have happened by the time we meet next, and a very high percentage of us got to get together with that. And then the STLP State Championship was going to happen very soon afterwards, so we didn't think we needed one for March. But I have sent the summary notes, thanks to Lisa Moore. Thank you, Lisa Moore, for those summary notes to see what we covered in February, and then you can take a look at those and educate folks in your district as you need from parts of those. That's why we do it in a Word format. And just a reminder for anyone is those are also all posted all the time on our KD Media portal, along with a copy of the webcast. And so I always tell folks, when our new folks that join us, a good way to catch up on what we're doing in the Kentucky Education Technology System and EdTech is take a look at those past 3 or 4 summaries or watch them, and then take a look at our master plan. Now, those are the 2 best ways to find out where we've been and where we're going. But thanks for joining us today. We have a couple of topics. We're mainly going to feature focusing on one of the topics we covered during the CIO Summit on finances. I sent you a copy of the feedback we got from the 21 tables that we had there of CIOs, and we typically have around close to the ballpark of 80% of district CIOs and districts that participate in that event. So that's a pretty healthy feedback from them, along with our own staff that are heavily there. And it ties into the results of legislative session, particularly on the technology side that we're going to discuss. And hopefully we have time to talk about Social Security numbers, and that will be on a more secure part, because we really don't want that going out in the media portal for some of the folks that may not have our best intentions at heart that are watching that. And we can see that folks, to be honest with you, around different parts of the world are watching these. So we have the part that we do in teams. I know that's just really our Office of Education Technology staff and our district CIOs. But we also have it so our good partners can watch in with this, and this is our partners like Kentucky Educational Television, other state agencies, our vendor partners, along with the state cooperatives. But at some point, we have to turn those off to talk really amongst a cybersecurity thing, which will be Social Security numbers. So hopefully we have some time. I want to give you some update. We don't have a final on that, but an update on that particular item. We also have Go Soapbox ready. There are 3 questions in there and 1 discussion question. Obviously, we watch those things for things bubbling up. We like for you to take time to give us the feedback on those questions. Those are helpful to us, and I'm hopeful that they're helpful to you in a variety of ways. And we'll tune in with those and get feedback on those. So let me circle back to the top on a quick update on some items, and we'll have some of our staff join us here. Of course, we had the KISTI conference, which was outstanding. Had it back at the roots of the International Convention Center in Louisville. It was great to see the districts and our staff and a lot of other folks, our vendor partners there, coming all together. So that was an outstanding event run by folks in districts, and appreciate everyone that played a role in that. And I know the KISTI staff is as well. Then we had our STLP State Championship in Rupp Arena. It was our largest attendance ever in the history of that program. And it set a new record for the Central Bank Center and Rupp Arena, those in combination of taking up the more square footage than anything has ever taken up there in the 3 years that's been open. And just an absolutely wonderful event, and just the payoff is for the children in the long term. It's just going to be wonderful. I saw a couple postings where a 10-year-old said it was the best thing he's ever attended in his life, which is pretty powerful thing to say. But on the other part of it is to see alumni, what it's meant to them. And I talked about, and it happens. I wear the STLP shirts and logos a lot when I move around, and someone will come up to me in a grocery store or a store or at a ball game and say, I was part of that, or my child was part of that, and then with a smile on their face, and then here's the difference it made to them in the long term. So it's a wonderful program to be part of, and thanks for all those that contribute to that. And I'll be seeing our state champions along with our STLP ambassadors and engineers in Denver, Colorado. Those that were selected and our state champions, we'll see them at the International Society for Technology and Education Conference. So looking forward to that. Quick update on a couple of the RFPs that have been awarded or in the mix. And Mike and team, I don't know if you want to say anything about our next generation Kentucky Internet, where we're at with that. I know for me, is we've done deployments across the state. When we hit the 100 district mark, that's a pretty important mark for us. And we just hit that. Mike, is there anything you want to add to the next generation?
No, I mean, nothing that we haven't regularly said. As you said, we're over that 100 mark. We've got, many districts yet to go, and we're on that final stretch. And so, as we expected, you hit some of your biggest hurdles and obstacles as you reach the final stretch, but we're working through those jointly together with ENA, our partner on this endeavor, and the school districts. As far as their participation in making this happen as well. So we've got our eye on the finish line, and but yet lots of work to do. Need to remind folks to be patient and be responsive. We will have some sites as we go through this final stretch where we'll have to call audibles as far as schedules, as far as when we're able to actually do the transitions and things of that nature. And I know we've been keeping everybody pretty well informed about those kind of activities, and as we're navigating this schedule again on the final stretch. So again, good progress, and got our eye on the finish line.
Yep. Anything else around the contracting arena that we need to mention or E-rate, Mike?
I don't really think so. I didn't have anything that stood out. I guess obviously if anybody's got any questions, pop them up there, and we'll make sure we respond to them. But I don't know that I had anything in mind. As we got several different contracts that have some kind of activity going on with them, but I didn't have anything really specifically expecting to call out on that unless somebody's got a question on something.
How about RFPs and process?
Actually, on the contracts, I do want to mention something now that you mentioned too, where we're switching to the Insight contract for Microsoft. And so we'll be providing more guidance and language, more guidance to districts on that. But we are switching to Insight as the contract which we will recognize and utilize for Microsoft licensing. So again, we'll be providing more guidance and information on that. But that's in process right now. And then as around RFPs, again, I can list them out as far as where we got activity going on with the CUES RFP, the Internet Content Management, the professional development, the SEEK system. All of those are in some step of the procurement process, the RFP and procurement process. So nothing really, I think, to call out specifically other than we continue to move forward with all of them, and we don't see any distraction from moving toward our objective and our goal with each of those.
Yeah. Just at high level, I don't think any of them are stuck in the mud that right. We have. They're moving along at the pace that we would hope that they move along at. So that's good news. Some other news on some other fronts there. Mike, by the way, is there anything on E-rate that we need to mention? I know that window closed. Is there anything from E-rate perspective your team would like to mention? Since that's just a big money maker.
I know one thing. The validation of the somebody's got to remind me of what it's. I had a note here. Let me see.
The discount, like it's the discount data validation.
Yeah, the discount data validation. Thanks, Amy. Where some of those have been being rejected, and that's being worked through. We're changing the format as far as how we're providing that certification letter to try and overcome that. But we're not sure exactly what triggered or caused that to happen, where some of those are being rejected. So again, if you have that happen, be sure to advise us of that. And again, we're trying to compensate for that, overcome that change that occurred there. Amy, is there anything else we need to say on that?
We just would recommend that districts file for an extension when they do get those PIA reviews until we can try to get through, if that modification for the verification letter is going to be satisfactory to the program. So,
Michael, we got you on about state technology plans or district technology plans. I think that's reached the finish line. Is that correct?
Hopefully everybody got those in. I think the due date was yesterday. So I don't know what the numbers are. If somebody's got those, but
yeah, we're at about 139 as of 10 o'clock this morning.
So I was going to say I hope the number was less than that, but so we do have quite a few handful of stragglers. So expect for somebody to be knocking on your door, not physically knocking on your door, but inquiring with where you're at with those. And Chuck or Marty, I don't know if you got any comments on who might be doing that knocking on their door as far as asking them where it's at. But again, everybody knows who they are.
Yep. Well, Mike, and I'll just tag a couple of things you said. I just put something out in the chat for everybody. A lot of the topics we've talked about so far, there'll be additional detail provided in the April CIO monthly agenda to be distributed later this week through our CATS field staff, as well as the fact that our CATS field staff will most likely be the ones knocking on that door in regards to our technology plans that we haven't submitted yet. But we do realize it's a super busy time of year. We build in, obviously, a grace period for all of that, but we do want to emphasize the importance of going ahead and getting those turned in. So thanks.
Another thing that's happened since we last met, and it's in your summary notes, that was coming up, and it did actually happen in the March timeframe. Our Kentucky Education Technology Master Plan for 2024 to 2030 has reached the finish line. It is now official in every kind of way, including the legislative approval of it. So that's crossed the finish line, as has the leases for things over $100,000. And there's a specific form that, and like I said, this process for the leases is 99.9%, I would say, really a legal kind of thing that involves your legal staff. And so there's a legal document that your legal representative needs to sign. And if they do that, it moves along very quickly through the process. And so both of those are now officially regs and law that went in place March 5th. Marty, on a couple of things involving the virtual and virtual connectivity in a kind of way, the Affordability Connectivity Program ends its funding in April. That was not renewed and this was helping districts, really helping families is what it was, but help districts indirectly to fund their internet connectivity beyond the school campus. Is that right?
That is absolutely right. They're in a wind down period for that, no longer accepting applications, obviously, for now over a month, but winding down that funding source, David.
Yeah. And we mentioned this yesterday, Marty, just at a high level about the virtual classrooms in A8, just a real brief thing about what districts should expect with that.
Yeah, we have some good movement and momentum in the online virtual and remote learning program space, and that's full-time enrollment programs across the state. And the movement towards a new classification, which has been out now for this school year. It's available, and we have districts transitioning their programs over to that A8 classification, and we'll continue to work that.
And there's also proposed something we're proposing to our board that's been shifted from June to now August timeframe. If folks aren't aware of it, Superintendent Fletcher of Lawrence County will soon become Commissioner Fletcher of KDE in July 1st. So he was confirmed yesterday, but we want to give him a chance to get up to speed on this particular topic. But what's just a real quick overview of, now it's not to be presented in June, but he'll probably get, I don't know, through the Local Superintendent's Advisory Council or some other way to get a heads up on it, him individually as well. But that's being shifted to the August timeframe. It's really two things happening at the same time, right?
Yeah, that's right. So it's a companion package of administrative regulation modernizations, I would say. So we're updating specifically for accountability purposes. So the accountability regulation will now recognize our full-time enrolled online virtual and remote programs, or our A8 programs, if you will. And so those will be included, which we've known all along that would need to happen. So those will be included in accountability regulation. And along with that, there's the administrative regulation that really focuses on our online virtual programs. And so there's some minor modifications there, including some quality assurance processes that are good and that our programs are will help our programs across the state continue to get better.
Thanks, Marty.
Yep.
The last time we spoke, we were talking about, and even in January, about districts with the Legislative Research Commission called LRC graduation citation. And we were encouraging districts that want to participate in that to send their specific information director information about their 8th and 12th grade students to LRC. And that was due on March 15th. However, a few days after that March 15th due date, I was informed, as was KDE, that LRC was not going to do the graduation citation. So I did have a question that I meant to ask actually back in February. That's on a Go Soapbox question. And I don't have a feel for when I asked LRC, I couldn't get a feel for them what percentage of districts had participated in the LRC graduation citation in the past, and how many had not. And I really couldn't get a good handle on that from them. So I've asked a Go Soapbox question around that, and I just asked you help us along with Social Security number questions that we have on there to get a feel for it. And I would ask folks that have graduated the past 10 years, 15 years, or had children or know of, or you're the district. Just let us know if your district had in the past, not anything to do with this thing that in February, this past February, March, and trying to send it in, but how many people in the past years had actually handed those out at the school level. So that'd be very helpful to find that out. And we're not quite sure what happened with that and why LRC decided to stop. It really wasn't a KDE decision to stop that. So as we get informed, I appreciate folks getting the message out and trying to get the message out. We even had one go out to Commissioner's Update after we've been informed that it would have been stopped. So I had to deal with a few of those coming in to say, where do I send it to? Because a few days after March 15th, the email address that LRC had identified to send it to, they had turned it off. So people are like, what's going on? And we were talking about stragglers. There was a due date on March 15th, but we all like to get it in 100% by that date. But there's always X number of stragglers, and that you got to circle back to try to get it across the finish line. So there were some that were a few days after that, and it was getting bounces. But I appreciate those, and just to give you, if you had any questions about what happened or not happened, I'm not really sure. And even the technology staff that I was working with at LRC is not sure why they've given the directive to just to stop with that. So as we find out more about that, let you know. I think those are the things that I want to make sure that we gave a quick update on. I do want to share something with you that was shared in our Kentucky Department of Education leadership team meeting. It was one of our topics of our CIO Summit that we'll spend more time on, this particular topic, how we think technology can help out with this particular topic. But I want to take you through this and let me know if you can see it.
We got it.
Nope. Good. Let me get settled here just a little bit. All right, good. Thanks. So every Monday morning, the KD leadership team meets, and we go over a variety of topics. We usually focus in on one particular one. Yesterday was chronic absenteeism. Before, and it says post-pandemic, but it's really before the pandemic and after the pandemic. And I thought it's worthy of sharing with this group for two reasons. One is this is one of the topics, as Marty mentioned, that we covered during the CIO Summit. And we'll spend more time on what technology's role can help out with this. But as most folks know, besides the instructional and educational impact of students not attending regularly, there's a pretty big financial impact to districts that have a high percentage of students that do not attend because of the SEEK formula that's based upon average daily attendance. And so I knew absenteeism, and I've done a lot of reading, just not what's happening in Kentucky, but across the nation. It had a big impact, but this is one of the roles that technology can help do, is help just not what can we do to try to get a higher percentage of students that are present for academics, during the day. That's an important part, but there's a big financial impact to a district of them not being there regularly. So this one was the first chart that was shared yesterday, and you see the parts in blue. Now there's parts that I think look like gray. Those aren't at 25% or higher chronic absenteeism, but they're creeping closer. And then the ones obviously in the darker, the almost the purple colors are those that have really high levels of it. But take a look at the pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. There's 3 charts here I'm going to share with you that almost take your breath away when you see them. And the part of it is you think about what can we do to study this and then reverse it. And there's parts of this is not going to be reversed. I hope that's not the case. Anyone that's taught anything from a classroom to sports to music understands the sequential process that it takes to teach students, that you count on them to be there to learn this basic concept before you move on to the next one. And the impact to the student and to you overall, what you're trying to do in your classroom or whatever you're trying to do with your team, of what it means for someone to be missing for long periods of time. And as the son of a teacher and the dad of a couple of teachers and father-in-law for a couple of teachers, I very rarely miss school. In fact, I can't remember missing a day of high school. And only in elementary, we didn't have middle school there that I missed because of funerals of close family members. I can't ever remember missing. Probably some days I should have stayed home as sick as I was, but once again, our family had the culture and the value of education, that it was quite a gift to get, because they had, my parents and grandparents, great grandparents experienced a time to where that wasn't, a service that, quality that was guaranteed to others. And so this chart, I kept on circling back to it. We talked about it for about a half hour yesterday. But this one also took my breath away. Our oldest daughter, Alyssa, is a kindergarten teacher. Was a kindergarten teacher for a long time, many years. Son-in-law is a 4th grade teacher, 3rd and 4th grade teacher for many years. My mom was in elementary, middle school. You would expect to see, not that you like it, pre-pandemic, as the kids get older, they tend to show up less. As I say, when I was in high school, 9th, 10th, and 11th, I didn't miss a day of school. And so like I said, there's probably days I should have been there, shouldn't have been there. But the other part that, I asked yesterday when I saw this, and I think this is true for most extracurricular activities, they require your attendance. And if you don't attend so often, that you shouldn't expect to be playing. So I played 4 different sports in high school. If I would have missed X number of days of school, at least where I went to is if you missed the school day, you weren't practicing, you weren't playing. If you missed any part of the academic day. So what these numbers also tell me is there's a pretty high percentage of students that aren't connected to extracurricular activities that connect them to the schools. I've done a pretty big 180 on the e-games part of it, because what you see is the part that always struck me with the students playing e-games as part of the High School Athletic Association is a good number of them had not had a connection with the school that required them to care about their grades and their attendance, because they're held to the same academic standards, the attendance standards. And so if they don't attend then they don't get to participate and play in the games. That was a good motivator. So I see that number for older grades. When I take a look at the younger grades, that's just astounding to me, and very worrisome of why we have those kind of percentages at such young grades. And we know, all of us as students and as parents or grandparents understand the importance that those early grades give you to an early run and go at life. And if you don't have those, how much you will struggle later on. And So I do think it is a crisis level. Obviously, these numbers are consistent what we're seeing across the country. But it just puts it in real perspective of you see these jumps in the absenteeism, but also you see what it means academically. But you also, since we're talking about finances, you understand what it means financially. Take a look at this one here. This was also pretty astounding. This is the last of the three charts I'll be showing on this topic. And the words speak for themselves. 75% of our students right now attend schools with high or chronically high absenteeism. And if you go pre-pandemic, that was 5%. 5% to 75%. One of the things we talked about yesterday in the KD leadership team about a lot of different things about making sure what can the whole educational environment do, along with the communities within counties do, because this is a all hands on deck trying to address this and understanding the added value that education brings. It's not really optional. It really makes a big difference in your success in life, education, what you have and what you don't have. A thing that came up yesterday, and I think there's truth to this, as you just think about in your own life, is if you miss something, did anyone miss you? Did anyone say they missed you? If you didn't show something, did anyone acknowledge that say what happened to you? Just showing care and concern, and that can be not necessarily a teacher, but that can be a fellow student. And I think that's the number one point. There's two parts of this. And then them asking and then wanting to ask, what did I miss out on? Did I miss out on something cool and something really meaningful? And I think we're to those points of how you make education, valued of, we go back to these younger grades. Those aren't children decide not to come to school. These are parents making decisions that for whatever reasons their child's not attending. The older grades, the 11th and 12th, although in my household, I would not have that choice of not showing up, but I understand how in certain households when they get older that they're doing their own thing, but that's alarming. So if you have some people, some of the kids that ride the bus stop so that they know and their peers are saying, hey, I didn't see you yesterday, are you okay? Or I haven't seen you for a couple of days, are you okay? And then kind of sharing, and getting them excited about what they missed at the school day. And that's where the technology part we talk about, can it help make it a more, engaging experience for students? But definitely this plays a big role in the finances that you see as your particularly the districts that we know, during the post-pandemic, the COVID money is getting ready to run out. We're all trying to get extensions for the year 3 of that. We talked about that the last webcast in February, but sometime that money runs out, and the sites that are in this blue, getting ready to turn blue, or the darker colors, definitely will face some issues with financing because it's based on average daily attendance, but also the educational experience of students missing such a high number of school days during that year. And I'll just pause there for any quick comments from folks that may have seen that before I go on. I'm going to take a look at the chat. I wasn't really looking at it.
David, I did drop the New York Times article that we've spent some time just for reference. And there's a question regarding what's the national landscape look like in this topic, and that article kind of touches on and pushes on where Kentucky is certainly not unique, and trying to help create solutions around getting more kids to school more often.
And it's some of the typical areas of high poverty you have it, but you're also seeing more affluent going, well, maybe it's just optional, and not valuing that opportunity for a variety of reasons. And so we're all engaging of how can we make that a more valued and experience. I come from an environment that cherished education and what it meant and how it changed their lives and their opportunities for the future. It definitely has changed mine. And so when you see that and you see such a high percentage of students impacted by that, either directly or they see such a high percentage of classmates not there, that's 10 levels alarming. And nationally, like I say, the New York Times article, which focused in on chronic absenteeism, was a wonderful article. Hits upon this shift across America, and can it shift back to a certain part? And absenteeism is not, we know that, Mark, we talked about this yesterday. There's a percentage of students that thrive in a virtual environment. Small percentage,
Very, very small. Yep.
But still, you take roll, are they there or not there, whether they're physically present in school building or they're virtual. This represents they're not showing up either one of those. And so this gets confused with virtual a lot. And what this is really saying, even those that have signed up for 100% virtual in that environment, they would not be showing up. There'll be chronic absenteeism. And so the numbers aren't greater for virtual versus in person. But it does come to discussion. You want to mention something, Marty?
Yeah, just the the connection when we're digging in and diving into potential solutions. We have programs across the state that our local school districts have designed where attendance, whether it's through traditional measures and virtual programs or through virtual performance-based measures, is a very important component of the program, right? So that's the point you're making, David, is that whether you are in person in a school or attending, whether you're 1 or 2% of enrollment that is attending a full-time enrolled virtual program, attendance still is important and gets tracked and measured. So there's not a direct correlation between those things. David, I think that there's some really interesting conversation going. But I think we have school districts who are investing a lot of energy in the efforts of chronic absenteeism and truancy and understanding that, local policies or just campaigns around high attendance and what that means, but also asking these tough questions. So we do have districts who are evaluating or not analyzing, their transportation connection, to absenteeism as well. And whether is Martin asked the great question that some of our districts are looking into right now is, do we have higher absenteeism rates with car riders versus kids who ride the bus that we provide, and so those are great questions that folks are digging into. And this is just such a huge topic, which again is why we touched on it and spent some time on it at our CIO Summit.
And we'll be sharing those at a future, except we're going to pick one of those topics each time. We're going to share that is, are there any roles that education technology can play to make the school a much more attractive and engaging experience for students to start attending in a higher percentage again, whether that be in person or the virtual courses that they've signed up for. Real crisis across America, and it's a financial crisis to those districts that have such a high percentage. And I know they're trying, to go full court press to address it. So let's talk about the legislative session results. They're pretty short as far as laws that impact us. There's a lot of things beyond that. Lisa Moore keeps up with that. She plays many roles for us, and one of those is keeping up with the legislative side of things. And Lisa, not really any laws. We're going to talk about the budget impact, particularly KET's budget and our additional budget requests, but not really any significant things that affect education technology. I know AI was mentioned early, but it didn't protrude. I mean, there'll be more AI bills in the future, but nothing really went forward with it.
No, I don't have anything to add, David. None of the KDE EdTech specific bills that were introduced actually made it across the finish line. There were a couple. There was a lot of focus this year on cybersecurity, and I think we'll continue to see that. So a lot of it was consumer related, and that's the one bill that did pass. It was House Bill 15, if anybody wants to take a look at that, but it was not directed towards school districts.
Right. Okay. Well, I just looked at this before I go on. The feedback I got from the LRC graduation citation, this is not probably what I expected to see the results of. I didn't realize such a high percentage would say not sure. I would almost take it as you're not sure. It's probably not been happening. That'd be something you probably would be aware of that's happening for 8th and 12th grade students in your district. But that's not the case. You're just not sure. But I thought there'd be more clear yes, no. Usually that's the way it is. We have a more clear distinction of yes, no, and not sure. And we're speaking of not sure, we're not sure why they stopped all of a sudden. So this, I'm sure that helps me or not, trying to understand what happened there. So let's talk about the results of the session, legislative session, as it results to finances, particularly education technology, and the results of the CIO Summit. So let me start with the place of the past couple of years with education technology funding. We've received record highs, going over $500 million in a year for education technology, and that's including the regular KETS funding that we have, the Kentucky Education Technology Network funding, other KD offices, and we have a lot of KD offices that help us with education technology funding. Like the Kentucky Educator Credentialing System is primarily paid by another office, and so we always are working within our office. What other things can the other offices help pay for, and that they do pay for, and we always show that every year. For those that are new to us, every year we present to the Kentucky Board of Education, and we lay out all the funding sources that are available to go toward education technology that we're aware of. There was also the past couple of years, and we talked about the negative impacts of the pandemic on chronic absenteeism. But one of the big positive sides was the money that went toward education technology. And I would say this is the discretionary funds, and we were quite successful in the Office of Education Technology of getting a very high percentage of the discretionary federal funds over the past 3 years. And these are services that weren't really for KD agency. These are services that help school districts. And you've heard me compliment my peers and my C-level position across the organization. The leadership we've had to support that in KDE, and districts have greatly benefited from that. And that's something that we have the ability, and particularly, the folks in leadership position OET, can really directly have an influence on. And typically the things that we have the ability to have a direct, where we can directly and regularly talk to folks, we have success in making our case and getting funding. And even the past years beyond this one, we had a raise in KIN funding. That was close to $20 million in new funding. At one time, we had KETS raised by $5 million, which brought it close to $25 million. And there's been a variety of other state level parts that we've been able to be successful with. However, there's an area that we've not been successful with for 3 straight bienniums. And part of that is trying to say, there'll be an effort to continue on with that. But we put in additional budget requests for funds for this is the 3rd biennium. Now, bienniums are every 2 years, just simply. And we put one in 2020. Of course, we had the pandemic that nothing really got done then. Then didn't get approved in 2022. And I'll tell you a little bit what that additional budget request was for. And then once again did not get funded in 2024. We were successful in getting it to be rated as one of our top Kentucky Board of Education priorities. We were successful in getting other offices in KD agency to support that. We were successful in having it substantially raised in the governor's budget, the budget in really the past 2 bienniums that was in the governor's budget. But we have not been successful in the House and Senate funding it. Now, also that's coinciding with this is since 2008 mortgage crisis, the Department of Education has been taking massive cuts. In fact, it was pretty nice in 2022 and even 2020, where we were not taking an annual cut to the KD budget that provides services to districts. And this is just not, and anyone that comes to district works here realizes that a very high percentage of what KD does, in our office in particular, 99% of it is supporting school districts and the money that goes towards supporting it. And so when KD agency takes a cut, what that means is there's a big cut to services that happen to school districts and potential services that happen. And those are shared services. We call them shared services. And the plus side of a shared service is, and you know this at the district level when you buy en masse, we get the same thing happening at the state level. We can drive costs down 40 to 60% by buying something at the state level. When you no longer buy at the state level and then you turn that over where districts have to pay for it, they will pay 40 to 60% more because you've lost that bulk buying of it. And that was one of the great added values. And during the, since 2008, that steady decline, and it happened across all parts of the department. OET took the proportional cut. We've lost $10 million annually. And so you combine a loss of $10 million, you combine it that our additional budget request wasn't funded, and the additional budget request had some really basic things in there. Can you please restore the previous cuts that were made to CATs? Can you help us prepare for the future with future cost of living expenses, for example? Those were the two big ones. We also included in there, we wanted funding to increase the CATs offers assistance so districts could purchase a higher number of technology staff or pay them better. And another big portion of that was to prepare us for the cliff of end devices that's going to happen, of needing to replace them. And so there's a big part of the money that was in there to replace devices. Now, keep in mind, that's a $70 million per year item of replacing end devices. It's a massive amount of device. We have over 1 million computers in Kentucky K-12. It's 25 times larger than all of state government combined and local governments combined is the devices we use, the amount of bandwidth that we use of going in place. And obviously during the pandemic, we had growth in the amount of devices bought, the amount of bandwidth used, and certain services that were put in place that districts deemed valuable across the state, like online registration. And emphasis on digital learning coaches and a funding source that went toward that. So when you're in an environment to where you have a $10 million annual cut, and I would say when you're talking to this, because I'm going to talk about certain things that are getting ready to happen, because there's consequences that we've been giving folks for 6 years of if we do not get a restore of the cuts and don't get something to address annual cost of living increases, then there will be consequences to districts, either services being cut or those costs being shifted to another funding source to pay for beyond KDE. We put that very bluntly multiple times. And maybe sometimes people got to actually see that happening or feel the impacts of that, of just not the cost shifting, because there are certain things under mission the cost will shift. But you'll be paying a whole lot more than you did before for it, because every district paid a proportional amount that we estimated what a district would pay. And because we bought it in bulk, we got it much less in cost. Well, now that will not have that, and everybody will be buying it individually, that'll go up in 40, 60% in cost across the state. So we've had that environment, for a bit, and we were trying to really avoid this day in every way that we could. And, from a legislative part, anytime I have the ability to directly talk to legislators about it, they are very receptive and appreciative of the CATS program. However, for folks that work here, they know this for a long time. It's very rare that this position gets to really talk directly with superintendents, and definitely not on one-on-one. Another weakness probably the department has, it has as far as getting funding, is we don't have lobbyists. And I would say an organization this size would need 10 lobbyists to try to work on, educating your best, superintendents in large groups, but particularly one-on-one. And, I have opportunities, and we definitely, I go out all kinds of opportunities talking with legislators one-on-one. Once again, that sounds, that's, once again, I find receptive and they're appreciative, but it takes really someone doing that over and over again throughout the year. And once again, I'm not really giving that opportunity or permitted to do that, nor are the other associates really permitted to do that. And it's really been the structure for about 30 years. And so it does take at the very highest levels. We had our board approve it, and I would say Robin Kinney was one of our best champions in this past legislative session. I think another change that would be helpful, we're getting in a commissioner that comes from being a superintendent. And I think that will help us making the case of it coming with the superintendent and him talking to other current superintendents about the importance of funding CATS. I think what happened in the discussion, particularly when we asked for money to increase and help districts through our CATS of Office Assistance buy more technology staff. And we have the people side of technology. We've talked about that, and I know we have some people new. We have a study called the people side that talks about this issue and gives a formula on how the number of technology folks you need and the kind of folks that you need. It lays that out. But I think the other part of that is where superintendents are talking to legislators, they say, just give me more SEEK money. I just need more SEEK money. If, instead of, increasing the CATS amount to buy more technology staff or pay them better, just put it in my SEEK formula. Instead of increasing the CATS budget so they can produce an offer of assistance that will allow us to replace $70 million worth of computers, just put it in my budget. And by the way, just to lay, I don't know if folks know this, 80% of our install base out there are Chromebooks. About 13% are Windows devices, 2% are Mac OS devices, and about 5% are iPads. And that's a $70 million per year price tag. That's not a one-time deal that we're talking about there. So we were trying to get something in the budget for those two items. And I think what happened in discussions and talking with Rob and Kenny, when talking with superintendents, they said, just give that money to me directly, me directly being the superintendent. So it's very appropriate on our timing to talk about this topic that came from the summit, because I think a big part of your all's job going forward will be making your case to get a portion of that SEEK money to help pay for a couple of different items. One is if you need more staff and you need to replace devices for those kind of percentages, 80, 13, 2, and 5, you'll have to make that case out of the SEEK budget.
Are you in badge hell?
Districts get? Well, here's probably need a muter. We'll wait for our muters to find.
I'm sorry.
Somebody's got on there. Okay.
We got it.
Okay, thanks. Just be cautious if you have your phone on mic, be cautious of your speaking. The other part of our budget that we were asking for, I mentioned to address the previous cuts that we've had and address, the cost of living increases, is at the state level, we pay $1.5 million for Infinite Campus. The legislature back in 2006, they funded for a student information system across the state, but they did not fund for the sustainment costs and definitely not the KD levels. So we were trying to get this $1.5 million help paid for, because right now we have to pay that out of E-rate rebates. There's no other funding source that we have to pay for that. And so we were trying to get the funding source to help us address that. So what that means as we look going forward is anything that has an annual cost of living increase, we are going to be looking for other budget sources to pay for it or stop providing it. And there are certain things that we paid for during the pandemic the districts have seen value in, but once again, and we asked for additional budget requests to help us sustain it, but it was not funded. So those will totally stop, at least being funded at the state level. And I'll give you some specific examples of that going forward. And once again, we'll be going through some of the charts that we went through in the financing. This is done really, when we talk about shifting costs, when we talk about maybe the office assistants being less going forward, not even increase, but being less. Those will impact you all. And you have to have those discussions about what funding source, if it's shifted from we can no longer pay for it at OET, that if you all want to continue that service, that's something you have to pay for locally and if it has additional budget. Those are costs that, we're going to try to get you aware of now. Now, in talking with Commissioner Kinney, and obviously I'll have this discussion with the new incoming Commissioner Fletcher, is we talked about in the February webcast of KD applying for an extension of the year 3 COVID money, and which we plan to do. And those are due in August timeframe. And there may be a percentage of that money that can be spent on these items for one more year. I'm going to talk about that we have to find a new funding source. So there may be possibly one more school year beyond the current one we're in the following things that I'm going to be talking about can be funded out of that. But really, give you all a year heads up of trying to find another funding source for that. And once again, this is in concept phase versus execution phase. And I want to say this before I start this list. If you talk to someone and say, well, I heard OET or David Couch say they're going to cut the following, and you don't give before what I've talked about we've sustained a $10 million per year annual cut, and the department has been heavily cut since 2008, and we took our fair proportional share. So we've been cut $10 million annually in OET, and we've not got any of our additional budget requests approved over 3 different bienniums. And there's cost of living increases for services, and there's services that we're providing. If you don't mention those 2 things, you give a preface of why this is happening, then to me, that really, it's not giving a fair context. The context is there's a reason why we're having to move to this. And we've given folks 6 years of advance warning of these. And they're going to start out small, but they'll get bigger over time because, you're around anything, cost of living goes up. And the cost that, the budget that we've had since 1992, it's unrealistic to think it can be, deal with everything that folks want to do in 2024. It's just unrealistic, not possible. So let's talk about some of the things that, on the first line that we'll start to be talking about. First one happens with e-transcripts. And you might say, what the heck is e-transcripts? What's parchment e-transcripts? This is a service that I appreciate Dee Dee Connor championing this service, and along with myself, but she was the true champion of it. Is for most of you that have applied for higher education ever before, you send out your transcripts, typically on paper, and on paper the universities or colleges received them, and it was a long process before you heard back were you accepted or not. Well, with e-transcripts, it takes what's already an Infinite Campus, it takes their transcript, and at no cost, particularly to low-income students, they can send it out to a limited number of colleges. Before you had to pay per transcript, and particularly for low-income students, that was a problem in families. But we had it so they'd really have to pay a cost. But the other really cool thing and valuable thing, it kept it electronic. So it took the electronic form in Infinite Campus. It paid for a service, parchment, that DD transcripts to the college and universities here in Kentucky, and immediately kept it in electronic format so they could significantly increase their process and return times. Are you accepted or not accepted? For example, Eastern Kentucky University, they were able to reduce their staff in their processing center by 5 or 10 people because they were just doing data entry of the stuff they received on paper. So that's one cost savings, but the other one was just the efficiency of turning those back around of you're accepted, not accepted. But that has a cost of living increase. Now it starts out with $2,600. Say, my goodness, that's nothing. But you got to stop somewhere to say, you know what, someone else has got to pay for this. So that's the first item that we've identified that some other funding source has to pay. Actually, there's one before that, school report card here in the agency. Previously, that was paid out of primarily the Office of Education Technology budget and the Office of Estimate and Accountability. When you do a new bid for a service, it shouldn't be surprising. We got a new service. We talked about that in February. It's going to be expensive. And many times, if you do it 10 years after you've originally done it, much more expensive. I mean, think about the housing market. How much things cost 10 years ago to how much they cost now? How much they cost 5 years ago? How much they were costing during the pandemic? It's a significant increase in those costs. And so same thing happens with the school report card. There was a significant increase in what we paid annually. Our budget has not been increased. And so we identified, KD is like, that we don't have the budget to pay for it. Either someone else needs to pay for it or it needs to stop. And of course, when you talk about stop, people start losing their minds and start saying, what awful people, you're already stopping this stuff. I can't believe you're doing it. But we're in a financial situation where we did not get the money along with the budget cut we've already had on an annual basis of $10 million to keep on paying for cost of living. So those are two that started right out of the gate. There's another one to where there's about a $41,000 a year increase in munis costs every year. And by the way, we get, if not the best, one of the best costs in a financial management system across an entire organization. Got grandfathered into the munis cost. It's a wonderful cost. So this is not just about, well, let's just rebid and we'll get all these great costs. Typically, the blind spot that folks have just rebidding it, and this would be this great cost. and when the time frame is changed by 30 years, typically the cost will go up 2, 3 to 10 times as much. But every year with Munis, out of the OET budget, we pay $41,000 worth of increases for Munis. There's going to be another funding source that to be used for that, and it may not be KDE. That cost may be shifting to districts to start paying for it going forward. We also have IC's remote registration, virtual registration. Big hit with districts, power user of that, along with the campus learning service. Those are, we don't have any money to pay for those. And so for districts that will want to continue that service beyond, if we, this, and I'm really talking about, there are really two stages of all these cuts I'm talking about. We're going to try to see if we can get one more year of COVID money to pay for them. If not, then it'll start happening pretty immediately. But the odds are high that we'll get one more year. But the IC, the IC registration tool, big value. We ask districts, do you get value out of that? They say they do. The campus learning, the digital learning coaches that we paid for, the stipend that we paid for, that was part of our additional budget request that did not get funded. And so that will circle back to districts. And we hope those digital learning coaches stay in the numbers that they are right now with that funding source going away. And the remote registration, this is an important point. I mentioned this earlier. When we pay for ICs, Infinite Campuses, campus learning, and their registration service, we get about a 40 to 60% discount on that because we're buying it in bulk at the state level. When we no longer pay for that and districts want to continue that service, expect a much higher cost than we were paying on your proportion. And that's just true for all these. When you stop paying for a service at the state level, it falls in that category. Virus protection is another one that falls in that category that we pay for on behalf of school districts. It has increases in cost, but there's the issue of just can we still afford it in general? In comparison, only 13% of our devices are Windows devices, and that always that is getting smaller. The Chromebook is getting larger, and these other areas I mentioned, the other 13% and 2% and 5% are getting smaller every year. So it's been always difficult for us in the view that is shrinking to keep paying for that service. The other one that also comes into play is an RFP that we currently have ongoing. Without talking about the details of that, we have a certain cost that we pay for that per year. And let's say, that we bid that in 2014, it's now 2024. Let's say in 2024, that cost goes up by 2 or 3 times. We don't have the money to pay for a 2 or 3 times increase. We don't have the money to pay for a $2,000 increase in that. So that service will have to be shifted. There someone else is paying for it. Well, we pay what we've been paying. And even on the Munis side, currently we pay close to $2 million per year for Munis. And so that's not saying we don't pay that in the year, but we stop paying for the increases of that service per year of $41,000. Same thing would happen with the internet content management is we're going to go through the process award. We don't know what the costs are going to be, but anything above that what we've been currently paying is a big problem because we don't have the money to pay for it. So either that falls in a category to where we keep on paying what we paid up to that point, and someone else pays the difference, whether it be another office in KDE, which they don't have the money either, or districts start paying for that district for that service. The other one comes into Infinite Campus, the $1.5 million that we pay out of the rebates. The rebates are going to get smaller, and that may be a shifting in costs as well. So we're just faced with this scenario of really trying to get strong at bats for the funding, and not that stops. In future years there'll be we'll go through the same process of trying to get the board to make it a priority. Trying to get the governor's office to make it a priority. And the next big one will be, 2 years from now, will be 2026 to try to do something about the funding. And then working on the legislature with, the limitations that I was talking to you about. But, maybe people are more receptive now that all the COVID money is running out. I think the other struggle we had is we got so much money. I talked about when I opened up is, getting the all-time records of over $500 million. And we got that a couple of years for funding. Folks might say, hey, you're all right, we don't have to deal with you later. But that's coming due pretty soon. And the reason for our additional budget requests, we were trying to get ahead of that. And it may take where certain things stop working, stop being funded, costs are shifted. They're stopped, someone else is doing it, that it gets folks' attention of trying to make KETS. And KETS always gets close to the finish line, I think, but there's always something that jumps ahead of it in last second in funding. I'm not saying those aren't worthy things. The other things that we don't have is we don't have groups like the Friskies group and Career Technical Education. I'm happy they get the funding and they don't get cuts in funding, but they are well organized groups beyond KDE, and even beyond districts that really go and work on legislatures, the importance of not cutting those services, and those are valuable, and the importance of funding them even more so. We really don't have that equivalent in the technology world, the K-12 education technology world. And so combine that with, we don't have really lobbyists. We don't have an army of lobbyists. It hurts us in that time. And so that's why you've always heard me say we need districts champion this. That's the best voice and loudest voice. But if at the district level, the superintendent is mainly saying, we need more SEEK, and we know you do. But that really doesn't mention KETS and getting increased funding in that, then that all comes into play in this environment. And so I suspect that we'll be running into some issues with this, people pushing back and say, I didn't know, but we've been trying to make folks well aware of it. I'm just taking a look at my notes here. If there's anything else major I wanted to say about it, I'll take a look at your notes here that I spoke about with our staff yesterday. I do want to share, let me just take a look at the feedback I got in the chat that anyone may have had that help me with this.
David, we Go Soapbox.
Okay.
Rory Fundora, shout out, hi Rory. We asked a great question. Will there be any kind of documentation we're planning to provide with these discussions on potential cost redirecting?
Well, part of it would be, Lisa Moore writes the summary notes. You'll see this in the summary notes next month, talking about them. And like I say, it's concept. And I hate for people, right? David Couch said, starting we're paying for all this. You don't give the context of why. You don't give the context of there may be a way to extend it a year. But it is important to start having those discussions of we're running into a financial issue of, we have to pick and choose what we fund. And this even has an impact on your KETS offers. There's no doubt about it. As we couldn't raise it. We're having difficulty sustaining it. We'll have difficulty sustaining it as much as we can. And I know that's always a top five. And districts want our services to be high quality, and that's always a top five. We get high fives at that at the end of the year. And we also in the top five, they want their offers to be as high as possible. We understand that and understand that balance. But there is a financial reality that we're starting to face of really since 2008, having a decline in our funding that's now realized itself to $10 million annually that we compared to what we used to have to what we have now. And this cost of living increases that they're going forward, these services that we put in place. So, but to your point and to the questions point, and still always appreciate your support and your questions is, we'll be documenting it. We have these discussions with our chief financial officers. They'll need to be well aware of the superintendents as well.
So Rory, I know is very strategic in forming discussions, and so we will in the notes that we send out recapping, we'll make sure to highlight that front-loaded part of the conversation to continue to have on what the attempts are going to continue to be. But we'll definitely help you lead and have the conversation.
Yeah. So can you all see the my Word document I got up here?
We got it. We got it.
Good. Thank you. So these are ones I sent this to you, but I just want for those that may not have it or they're trying. This is what this is a session that Mike Lettingham led. Just how comfortable you are empowered to represent and overcome these challenges to your EdTech program. And these are we had 21 tables, and I'll try to get as many tables on here as I can. You kind of can see how they responded to this and the range they gave. And I would say in light of what I've just described, this will have to go, you have to get more in the 9 and 10 range. Because if you're going to be in there battling for SEEK dollars to pay for this $70 million per year replacement cost we have across the state, and you can take yourself proportionally how much that means to you, and any technology staff that you need to keep, pay better, or get more of, and to pay for any costs that we can no longer pay at OET level, they'll be shifted to the district. And it may be coming down to your budget to say, well, if this is technology related, then your budget has to pay for it. All these will start coming into play. And it's, we weren't sure during the summit in March, how this would play out. We were giving it our best at bat to try to avoid this scenario during the current legislative session, particularly when there's, a record amount of surplus funding in the budget. Felt our odds were high. We had a great champion in Robin Kinney. Everything in OET, we had OET staff, including myself, that spent a lot of time and energy on it. Once again, we don't have lobbyists or pay for lobbyists that do this kind of thing that comes into play, and in battling, previous great funding through the COVID money. I'll scoot down here a little bit since you all can see that one, and I will go down to the rest of the table on that, and you can see those averages, on what was said there. Let's go down here. I did this. Okay, so here's who else in your district is concerned about it beyond you. And I see a lot of finance directors in this. I see superintendents, and maybe you can help articulate the case a little bit better. A little heads up I'm giving you today, and we'll put it in writing. Of what's coming, at least for the next 2 years, because there's nothing that can be done in the interim besides just trying to get 1 year's worth of more funding that pays for these things that have a cost of living increase or have a cost increase that we can no longer fund. So you'll definitely have to do this at least for 1 year, if not 2. Get these conversations going. Yes.
And it's a couple tables also mentioned that teachers are aware, and that is a great.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's a good group. Yeah. Getting the teachers your champion that's a great one. CFOs, superintendents are an important one. I like 814. Whoever did 14, that's exactly my technique. I've always had a great relationship with our finance folks. I mentioned earlier, it was no accident that Office of Technology got the highest percentage of discretionary funds of COVID than any other office in KDE. That was not a mistake. That was years of having a great relationship with the finance person and really my C-level peers in other offices. I do invite myself to a lot of meetings. And I pay attention to meetings that you say, well, why is, technology is not even one of the items, but I sit there much like chronic absenteeism, very engaged. I was very engaged in part of that discussion yesterday with our KD leadership team meeting. Chief Academic Officer is another big one. That's another one of your champions that show the impact of what this means of not getting it. DPPs as well. This part was golden too. I hope you spend some time. I love this question, and I love the answers that were given. What do you do ensure you and your position is part of the solution and not a victim of circumstance? And man, this was golden stuff that you all responded to, and the big idea that we got from the tables. A lot of us have the seat at the table, inviting yourself to the seat at the table. And, I heard this talked about, you got to make it relevant. And in human speak terms, the difference technology is making to their day-to-day that they may take for granted, or what you're doing behind the scenes, that they're not realizing if that goes away, everything that they find valuable that involves a technology-enabled service also goes away, that they're taking probably for granted. Yeah, I like this one, table 12, create your own infographic. We do that at state level. It is a big, I've always said, in order to these positions as CIOs and tech leader, you got to be a big into like addressing the money side of things. It's interesting that coaches hired now for major college positions are now in the position to where not only do they got to try to recruit players, but they also got to try to work on the money that pays these recruits, the nil money. And that's they're involved in fundraisers and working with big donations, and that was a big part of what coaches didn't have to worry about in the past at just not college, but all these Division I levels. Not they're having to worry about it. And this is something that I've always been aware of, and the need to, you got to be a champion for the money side, because as always will say, a dream without money is a hallucination. And so you got to always work on the money side of trying to get it. I'll just scroll down here. Once again, these were just so excellent. And thanks to all those that he said this goes to 80% of districts, along with our technology staff that were there at those tables to get this stuff. And I'll be sharing the other parts as well for the other, big topics that we had 4 big topics. So I'll be sharing those as we address each one of those in our webcast coming up. So this is question 4. I think we had 5 questions in this. Once again, this was a good one too. And this may not, for table 5, this may not be that you do directly, but you have your superintendent is challenging, not just going to these meeting with the state representatives and senators on increasing seat, but also having KETs, they're talking about KETs. Like I say, we're years away from that, but it's not too early to have them say you can champion both, and you can talk about the importance of both. By the way, I got to sit in on these tables too once in a while, and there were great conversations. We didn't cover everything in these. It was great stuff on these, and I hope you got value in meeting folks from other districts that you normally wouldn't meet with and establishing a relationship. Yes, Marty.
Yeah. So in Go Soapbox was a question related to this topic, and so William Pierce asked, and it's you touched on it, but if you want to reiterate kind of our thinking here, but if other departments are successfully including like some kind of role or connector of a lobbyist, I know you mentioned groups that advocate for funding, whether that's in the CTE space or the family resource space. But is this something that we need to more intentionally explore? Is the way William, from an ed tech perspective?
It is. I don't have a good answer, for who those are. Who is that? Who are our great advocates that their hair is on fire if our budget's being cut? Their hair is on fire if we're not getting, if something like this happens, additional budget request is not done or not being considered. And I'd be interested in anyone that has an idea for who those groups are. I mean, we're trying to find them as well to help us out with the next go around, because it necessarily won't be you, but role you could play is obviously the role I played with our commissioners over the years as trying to make sure they're informed. My board was informed. Anyone that may talk to legislators was informed, but I rarely got the opportunity, as almost everyone in Katie and the leadership. Associate commissioners very rarely talk directly or arrange time to directly talk with legislators. We've been permitted. Typically, you have to go through a step to get that permission, but it's not a regular one that occurs, within the department. So I don't have an idea for the group unless you do, Marty, or somebody else does.
Well, I think it's our next area of exploration. We've taken the steps and gotten the right leadership folks to acknowledge the value and importance, and so then we take the next step. And I wanted to call out that William identified as well in his question that he's not sure of the role of where the agency, the KDE, can play in that space. And David, you just pushed on, and I just want to call attention to it. You identified that you rarely get the idea or get the opportunity from the associate commissioner role or as the K through 12 CIO to meet one-on-one with legislators to specifically talk about budgets. And earlier, I think you made that same comment, but you said you rarely get to talk one-on-one with superintendents. I think you meant legislators.
I meant legislators. Yeah.
So I wanted to clear that up,
Thank you.
That-
Yeah.
That is
Superintendent.
that's a next step for us.
Yeah.
And we're going to need all the help we can get
Yeah.
because we obviously, this is vital for our next steps.
You know, in committee meetings, I've had 2 or 3. They were talking about a topic, and it wasn't the topic. I always would work in. We need money. For example, I was talking about cybersecurity with 2 of them. Do different committee meetings that had large number of legislators in it, and what we do in technology is very well received. Questions were good. You can tell they were appreciative of what we did, and so I try to work it in that. But that's not the same as someone continually lobbying and educating. Whether that's the paid lobbyists or that's these other groups they're working with them, or the superintendent that regularly has that on on their lips and they're mentioning it along with the other things the district needs. Catch has got to be one of those things that the superintendent mentions to these legislatures versus just more seek. And I'm not saying that you don't need more seek, but it's got for the Cats to really get that, address the big cuts, address the Cats offers and to address the additional budget that's needed for cost of living, they'll need to happen. We talked about other funding sources and that this was helpful in there, and these will come into play for sure. When you're taking a look beyond SEEK and beyond the Cats funds, and what do you do? I guess we did have 6 questions in that. Mike had a lot of questions in this one. I forgot about this one. So 6. And this is kind of that question, right? What do you do to create folks beyond, I call it the CTE equivalent, the Frisbee's equivalent, that go out there and say, we need more money for technology, whether it be Cats or whatever. Who are those biggest champions that help do that? I think the table 9 was utilize CTE-like program groups. I'm sure Chris Friskies is mentioned in here as well. No, bottom here. Okay. So that was our big topic. I'm trying to see if I'm going to take a look at some other parts in here. I'm looking at the feedback, the social networking feedback. And I think we're ready, unless I see any kind of thing here or any kind of questions. And obviously people have the ability just not to chat, but to unmute and talk directly for our districts, our own staff. Any other comments you'd like to make for this before we close this session out and go to a closed session about Social Security numbers? Because I'd really like to work some of that in today. And this is for districts you want to pause and talk about it, or even our staff.
David,
Yes, Stella. Hi.
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good.
I put this in the chat. I would love to be part of a subcommittee to talk to legislators if you all trust me to do that.
Yes, absolutely. That's a good, I appreciate you offering that. So I think that really helps it. There's nothing like, that's a good point, bringing districts up there and talking about the difference that Cats has made overall and the importance of it overall to helping out. Great point. Thank you. So I get you first on the list of helping us out, and any other of the district guys willing to do that, help us out. What would you say, Marty?
I just thought I heard a nomination for Stella to chair that subcommittee.
I'll be okay. I'll be fine with helping with that.
Thank you.
My
Thank you,
pleasure.
Appreciate it. And it does take people, we have a lot of volunteers that help make special things happen. And if everyone's waiting for everybody else, usually nothing's done. So it will take people volunteering their time and getting their hands a little bit dirty to help out with this and energy. Because this is not going to happen.
Exactly. If we wait for the legislators to get things done, we will have a balance of $0.
All right. So we'll pause here just so for the folks that are watching by KD Media Portal. We're going to stop right here. I'm going to have a little special session on Social Security numbers and then give an update on our progress about trying to get better cybersecurity around student social security numbers and adult social security numbers. For those that are joining by only our KD Media portal, thanks for joining today. For those that are interested and can be helpful to me as we're talking about student social security numbers and adult, this impacts every district of trying to get a healthy data diet of those and reducing cyber criminals from being such an attractive target to cyber criminals by having social security numbers of students in particular and adults as well, and then all the different places those are going to and trying to get a handle on those. So once again, thanks for those that joined us, and we'll be taking a look at the Go Soapbox questions that we had around social security numbers and the discussion question we had to get to that point. So we'll just, Megan, just tell me when we're off the air for the KD Media portal, and we'll go right into social security numbers.